Good evening, jolly tea drinkers. Welcome to Bedtime Tea, one more steep before sleep. Grab your teacup and your cozy blanket. Get comfortable and allow me to read you a story. Are you ready? Tonight's story is The Case of the Almost Kiss. What's an almost kiss? Asked Miss T. Well, you know, said Paulina. He leaned in, and then I leaned in, and then our lips almost touched. So you didn't actually kiss him, replied Alina Messina, also known as Miss T to her friends. She wiped down the counter as they spoke. Well, technically no, but it almost happened. So you didn't actually kiss him, repeated Miss T with a small laugh. It's not that simple. It was a whole moment. It was an almost kiss, said Paulina. Like I felt his breath on my face. Ah, she sighed. So you leaned in real close, said Miss T. Mm-hmm, said Paulina. And you felt his breath. Mm-hmm, said Paulina. And your lips never touched, chuckled Miss T. No, but it was just as intimate as an actual kiss. I'm telling you, it was an almost kiss. Paulina hummed and paused. And it lets you know that when our lips actually do touch, baby, it's gonna stop time. She cleared the dishes from her tray. Sorry, but it sounds like he just blew air in your face and walked away, teased Miss T. Hey, don't knock an almost kiss. They can be earth-shatteringly amazing, said Paulina dreamily. Miss T laughed. Earth-shattering, huh? Sounds like a cheesy rom-com. That stuff doesn't happen in real life. I mean, why didn't he just kiss you? Because he got a work call and had to leave, said Paulina. Miss T playfully scoffed. The man allowed a work call to interrupt your earth-shattering moment? Did I mention that he's a fireman? Gushed Paulina. Really? Said Miss T. Okay, I suppose that phone call was a reasonable excuse then, she said with a chuckle. Just then, Sean Hansen, known to his friends as Mr. Coffee, entered the cafe and joined the ladies at the counter. Looks like you ladies are having a wonderful day. What's got you in such a good mood? He asked as he sat down on a stool. Paulina was just telling me about her date with Mike. Mike? Questioned Mr. Coffee. Yeah, the guy that we met during our road trip, said Miss T. With the bike shop, right? She asked Paulina, who nodded. Oh, the one who almost ran you over with his cart, said Mr. Coffee. He didn't run us over. It was his cart that went rogue, said Paulina as she walked away. Mr. Coffee chuckled. So, what can I get for you today? Asked Miss T. Ooh, I've actually got this new blend that I want you to try, she said nervously. Of course I will, said Mr. Coffee. By all means, please pour me a cup. Miss T clasped her hands together happily and said, Yay! Thank you for always being my tea taste tester. Anytime, said Mr. Coffee with a smile. I actually have a favor to ask of you today, he said hesitantly. Oh, sure. What do you need? Asked Miss T as she placed a cup in front of him on the counter. I had an unexpected meeting come up, and I'm going to have my driver take me, said Mr. Coffee. Okay, said Miss T as she poured tea into his cup. He held the cup and said, "Thank you." "So what's the favor?" she asked. "The issue is that I drove here. Would it be all right if I left my car parked behind your cafe until I return, please?" "Oh, sure," said Miss T. "That shouldn't be a problem." "Thank you," he said. "I should be back around 6 or so. I hope it won't be too much of an inconvenience." "Don't worry, it will be fine," said Miss T. "And I'll leave my car key in case of an emergency," said Mr. Coffee. "Did I hear someone say they were leaving their car keys?" asked Paulina as she placed her tray on the counter. "Your hearing is always impeccable, Paulina," said Mr. Coffee. "Sean's going to leave his car here for a few hours while he runs to a meeting," said Miss T. "Ooh, I think it's time for a joyride," said Paulina. "Wait, which car is it?" "It's the Range, and please don't take my car for a joyride," said Mr. Coffee. "I'm leaving it here because I believe that it'll be safe." "Oh, it'll be safe with me," said Paulina. "I know how to drive. I'm a great driver." "Says who?" choked Mr. Coffee. "Who can back up that statement? I have never seen you drive. You don't even own a car." "Hey, hey, hey," said Paulina defensively. "Just because I don't own a car doesn't mean that I can't drive. Miss T doesn't own a car either, but she can drive." "Yeah, well, I trust her more than I trust you. I'm sorry, but she is far more trustworthy in every situation," said Mr. Coffee as he drank his tea. "Fine. You may have a point, but I'm still offended," said Paulina. "Okay, guys, this is not a competition," said Miss T. "Key, please." She extended her hand, and Mr. Coffee placed his key in her hand. "I'm going to leave your key over here on this hook." She placed the key on a small hook on the kitchen wall. "Your key and your car will both be here when you get back." "Thank you," said Mr. Coffee. He pointed to Miss T and said, "You see? Trustworthy." Paulina laughed. He stood up and finished his tea. "This tea is really good." "Testing the new blend?" asked Paulina. "Yep, this is vanilla rooibos," said Miss T. "You really like it?" "I like it so much," said Mr. Coffee, "that I'd like to take some to go, please." Miss T looked at him. A huge smile bloomed across her face. "Coming right up." She took his cup and walked into the kitchen. "Mm-hmm," said Paulina. "What?" said Mr. Coffee. "Fine, I guess I trust you too. There, are you happy now?" Paulina replied, "That's not what I—" "Hey, Paulina," a voice interrupted. She and Mr. Coffee turned around. "Mike," said Paulina with a smile. "Hey," smiled Mike. "Hey," said Paulina. "Hey," repeated Mike. Hey," said Mr. Coffee as he stood up. "Mike, right? I'm Sean." The two men shook hands. "Yeah, I remember you from that day on the beach," said Mike. "Good to see you again." "Likewise," said Mr. Coffee. "All right, we got your tea to go," announced Miss T as she reappeared with a to-go cup and a bag. "And I even threw in a scone." She gave him the items with a smile. Mr. Coffee opened the bag and sniffed inside. "Is that an apple cinnamon scone that I smell?" He shook the bag to try to get a better look. "Yes, it is," said Miss T. "And freshly baked, too." "Miss T, you spoil me," said Mr. Coffee. "Thank you again. I'll see you this evening." He smiled and left the cafe. Miss T watched him walk away. Paulina cleared her throat. Miss T, you remember Mike, right? Oh, the man who saved our lives? Yes, of course I remember, said Miss T. Mike, it's so nice to see you again. How are you, Miss T? Asked Mike. Good, please have a seat, said Miss T. Can we get you anything? Yes, I was just about to ask him that, said Paulina. Mike, would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please, said Mike as he sat down at a table. Ooh, and may I please have one of those apple cinnamon scones that I thought I heard you mention a couple minutes ago? They sound absolutely delicious. Oh, yes, there's more in the kitchen, said Miss T. I'll grab one for you, said Paulina. Is there a specific kind of tea that you'd like to drink? I'll let you decide, said Mike. I trust you. Paulina smiled and said, Okay, I'll be right back, and went to the kitchen. Mike's eyes followed her all the way. Miss T chuckled, and Mike's attention returned to her. This is a nice place that you have here, said Mike as he removed his coat. I'm debating on whether or not I should tell the guys back at the fire station about it, or if I should just keep it as my own secret place. Miss T chuckled. I will respect your decision either way, she said. So what's it like to be a fireman? Do you really like just running into fires all the time? She teased. Well, no, I don't like running into fires. That would be kind of crazy, he said. Also, firemen do a whole lot more than just running into fires. We have the same medical training as an EMT, so we actually also respond to all sorts of medical emergencies. What I really enjoy is the ability to help someone when they're in need. Oh, that's really noble, said Miss T. Do you ever get any calls that have nothing to do with fires or medical emergencies? Like, do you actually rescue cats from trees? She chuckled. Mike laughed. Well, it's rare, but it happens. No way, you're kidding. Honest. You know, one time, we once had to rescue a teenager who got stuck in a tree because he was trying to rescue a cat that was stuck in that tree. Are you serious? Said Miss T with wide eyes. Here's another funny story for you. Just 2 weeks ago, a call came in. A woman said that her house was on fire. We rolled up, full crew, prepared to fight a massive blaze. We got there, and it turns out there was no fire. What? Said Miss T. The real story was that her dog was trapped underneath its doghouse, and the woman only said that her house was on fire because she didn't think that we would come to help her if she told us the truth. Oh, wow, so she lied, said Miss T. People are something else. Yep, people are something, all right. He laughed. Paulina returned and placed a teacup on the table. Oh, what's so funny? She asked. Mike was just sharing the unexpected challenges of being a fireman, said Miss T. Paulina placed a plate with a scone on the table. Oh, I wouldn't mind hearing a story or two. Thank you, said Mike. I've got plenty. How much time do you have? He said as he lifted the cup to take a sip. Paulina sat down at his table, leaned her chin on her hand, and said, Oh, I've got plenty. Mike locked eyes with her and smiled, and Paulina looked away and then back at him and smiled. Would you look at that? Said Miss T. It looks like Maddie accidentally left her library book on that table over there. I'll just go over there and give you two some space, she said awkwardly. She went to the other table, picked up the book, and then walked into the kitchen. Mike took a sip of his tea and placed the cup down on the table. Do you like it? Asked Paulina. Yes, but not nearly as much as I like you." Paulina smiled and said, "So, tell me one of your funny fireman stories." Mike rubbed his chin for a moment and said, "Okay, okay. One time, it's 2 a.m. and we get a call for a fire alarm. We get there, no smoke, no fire. We look around and suddenly a man runs outside carrying a large TV in his hands. Turned out the alarm company mistakenly reported the burglar alarm as a fire alarm." "What? It was a robbery in progress? What happened?" "Well, the police arrived at the same time we did and were able to catch him." "Oh, that's crazy," said Paulina. Mike smiled and reached for her hand. "Stick with me, kid. I've got tons of crazy stories to tell you." A couple of hours later. "How did you not know that it was you?" asked Paulina. "It was a heavily smoke-filled room. How was I supposed to know that I was staring at myself in a mirror?" Paulina laughed heartily. She had joyfully spent the last couple of hours splitting her time between serving customers and chatting with Mike at his table. Miss T walked up to them and said, "You guys are really having a good time over here. Can I get you a refill?" "Oh, no, but thank you." Mike stood up and put on his coat. "Unfortunately, I have to get going. My shift starts soon." Paulina stood. "Thanks for stopping by." Mike reached for her hand. "Thanks for having me." Miss T said, If you need me, I'll be in the kitchen." She turned and walked away quickly. "Wanna walk me out?" asked Mike. "Okay," said Paulina. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Miss T started working on a fresh batch of muffins. She measured out the ingredients and was reaching for chocolate chips in the cupboard when Paulina walked into the kitchen. "Hello," Paulina sang sweetly. Miss T was so startled that she dropped the bag, spilling the chocolate chips all over the kitchen floor. "Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you," said Paulina. "Oh, it's not you. They just slipped from my hands," said Miss T with a nervous laugh. She knelt down to clean the floor. "I don't believe you," said Paulina. "What?" Miss T froze. "Trying to pick up 100 chocolate chips using your bare hands?" said Paulina. "That's borderline insanity. Here, let me sweep them up for you." "Oh," said Miss T nervously as she stood. "Are you okay?" asked Paulina. "I must have really scared you when I bounced into the kitchen. I'm sorry about that. I was just so excited. Mike wants to take me out again." "Oh, that's great, Paulina." You don't sound like it's great," said Paulina. "What's wrong? Rainy day got you down?" "Something like that," said Miss T. "You know what would make you feel better?" asked Paulina. "A ride in the Batmobile. Grab the keys. Let's go." "What? No," said Miss T. "Sean said he didn't want us to use his car." "Clearly he was joking," said Paulina. "No, I don't think he was," said Miss T seriously. "He didn't want us to damage it." "Oh, psh! It'll be a quick trip. We won't get into any accidents." "I don't know. I think I've had enough trouble for the day," she said uneasily. "What do you mean?" asked Paulina as she grabbed the key from the hook. Miss T pointed to the ground. "Look at all of these chocolate chips. I could have made at least 2 dozen cookies." "Oh, girl, chips happen. But Batmobile keys? They don't come around every day," said Paulina with a smile as she shook the key. I can't just leave these on the ground, said Miss T. You are stressing yourself over nothing. Don't worry, I'm grabbing the broom. Paulina swiftly swept up the chocolate chips. Man, those were a lot of chips. Told you, said Miss T with her arms crossed. Paulina scooped the last of the chips into the trash. There, are you ready? No way, I am leaving that car alone. And she went back to her mixing bowl. Come on, Miss T, pleaded Paulina. Don't make me go alone. Nope. Okay, I'm only taking it for a spin around the block. What trouble could we possibly get into? Paulina said as she playfully bumped her shoulder with Miss T's. Well, it's a rainy day. Anything could happen, said Miss T. I'll drive slow and we'll wear our seat belts, said Paulina as she dragged Miss T to the back door. But who's going to watch the cafe? There are no customers right now, and if we leave at this very moment, we'll be back before any new ones arrive. Let me at least put the back in 15 minutes sign on the front window, said Miss T. Yes, said Paulina as she skipped to the door with Miss T. And you promise to drive slow? Asked Miss T. Scout's honor, said Paulina. Paulina, you know you were never a Boy Scout, said Miss T. I know, but Mr. Coffee said it 2 weeks ago when he made a promise, and it sounded really reassuring, said Paulina. Come on, let's do this. 30 minutes later, the ladies re-entered the kitchen. That was the longest trip around the block I have ever taken, joked Miss T. Hey, you said you wanted to be safe, so I made sure not to speed, said Paulina. She placed the car key back on the hook. Yeah, but you were driving so slow that a woman actually walked by us on the sidewalk, said Miss T. Okay, that woman was power walking, said Paulina. She was like 9 months pregnant and basically waddling, teased Miss T. They dissolved into laughter. Ladies, Miss T and Paulina jumped and turned around. Oh, Sean, you scared us, said Miss T. I'm sorry, Miss T. That was not my intention, said Mr. Coffee. It's okay, said Miss T, again uneasy. You're back early. She washed her hands and walked over to her mixing bowl. Yes, my meetings wrapped up earlier than anticipated, said Mr. Coffee. That's great, said Paulina. Anything interesting happen while I was gone? He asked. Nope, nothing worth mentioning, said Paulina. She washed her hands and glanced at Miss T. Said Mr. Coffee. He slowly walked around the kitchen and looked around. Miss T placed ingredients into the bowl nervously. Paulina removed dishes from the dishwasher. So catch me up. What did I miss while I was gone? He asked. Did you take a walk during your break? In this rain? Said Paulina. We were not trying to walk anywhere, right, Miss T? Uh-huh, replied Miss T, keeping her eyes on her bowl. Mr. Coffee stopped in front of Paulina and said, So you didn't walk? Instead, you chose to take my car for a ride? Your car? Asked Paulina as she moved over to the cupboard. Why would you even ask us that question? You told us not to drive it. And you still did it anyway, said Mr. Coffee as he followed her. Where would you get an idea like that? Asked Paulina as she continued to dodge him in the kitchen. Someone sounds a little paranoid to me. I am not imagining the fact that the location of my car is different from where I left it earlier, said Mr. Coffee. What do you mean? It's right behind the cafe, said Paulina. I left it parked in front of the dumpster. Now it's next to the dumpster, said Mr. Coffee. How do you explain that? Said Paulina as she looked at Miss T for help. Nothing. My car was moved because you drove it, which I explicitly asked you not to do, said Mr. Coffee. You have no proof that your car was moved, sir, defended Paulina. Perhaps you're remembering incorrectly about where you parked it. Oh, yeah, he said. And how do you explain the call that I received from Mr. Jenkins complaining that I hit his car at the grocery store and scratched the paint? What? Now I know that's a lie, because I never went anywhere near the grocery store. I only drove around the block, said Paulina triumphantly. Aha! Mr. Coffee pointed at her. Gotcha! Paulina gasped. Dag nabbit. Well, you didn't have to trick me by lying. I would have told you eventually. Oh, I didn't lie, he said. Mr. Jenkins did call me to complain that I scratched his car while trying to park at the grocery store. He sent me the footage from the security camera. Look. He pulled out his phone and showed Paulina. Oh, no, that wasn't me, said Paulina. I seriously only went around the block. Miss T can vouch for me because she was in the car too. You guys, said Mr. Coffee. I should have known you couldn't resist. But wait, if you didn't do it, who did? Asked Mr. Coffee. They both paused, then slowly turned to look at Miss T, who was mixing by hand rather intensely. Paulina and Mr. Coffee looked at each other in confusion, then walked over and stood on either side of Miss T and stared at her. Ooh, Miss T, said Paulina. Miss T, said Mr. Coffee. Did you take my car and then hit Mr. Jenkins' car? He and Paulina continued to stare at her for a very long moment. Yes, it was me. I did it, said Miss T, letting go of the mixing bowl. She covered her face and walked over to the kitchen sink. Miss T, I am shocked, joked Paulina. You were the person who pestered me about not using the car, only to find out that you drove it and hit another car. She pointed at Mr. Coffee. And you thought she was more trustworthy than me. I didn't see this one coming at all, chuckled Mr. Coffee. I am shocked. You played so innocent and goody-goody when you already secretly committed the crime and then tried to cover up the evidence, said Paulina. It wasn't like that, said Miss T. No, said Paulina. As she laughed. You know what you are? You're a smooth criminal. It's always the quiet ones. Mr. Coffee laughed. It was an accident, said Miss T defensively. Tell us what happened, chuckled Mr. Coffee as he led her to a stool. Miss T sat down on the stool. It all started when Mike and Paulina were canoodling at one of the tables earlier. Excuse me? Canoodling, said Paulina. We were not canoodling. Whatever you want to call it. I felt like I was intruding, said Miss T. I saw Maddie's book on the other table and figured I could just take a small break and walk over to the library to return it. But as soon as I opened the back door and saw how hard it was raining, you decided you needed another option, said Mr. Coffee as he nodded his head. Yes, and your car was sitting right there, said Miss T. It was just supposed to be a quick trip, but then I thought, well, while I'm out, I might as well grab a few groceries so that I don't have to go back into the rain later. See that? Paulina interrupted. The smooth criminals always think ahead. Mr. Coffee laughed. And when you were parking, you hit Mr. Jenkins' car. I hit Mr. Jenkins' car, Miss T said regretfully. And you immediately drove away without saying anything? Asked Mr. Coffee. Yes, I drove away without saying anything. She nodded and looked down at her hands. Wait, you didn't even get the groceries? Asked Paulina. No, mumbled Miss T. Didn't even get the groceries. Was it worth it? No, she sighed. And when I got back here, I was so frazzled that I jumped at every sound. Oh, that's why you were acting like that, said Paulina. I'm so sorry, Sean, said Miss T. I will go to Mr. Jenkins and apologize, and I'm willing to pay you both for any damages. It's okay. You don't have to worry about the repairs. I already checked his car before I got here, and it's fine. It wasn't a big hit. There was only a small scuff on his car. I told him I would take care of the cost. And as for my car, we're good. Miss T stood. You're not going to let me pay for any of it? Nope, we're all good, said Mr. Coffee. But I feel so bad, said Miss T. Mr. Coffee stepped closer to her and held her hand. Look, I know it was an accident. You would never do that on purpose. And clearly it was eating you alive, chuckled Mr. Coffee. So, no, you apologized, I forgave you, and you owe me nothing. Are you sure? Asked Miss T. Mr. Coffee hugged her. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I forgive you. It's okay, he whispered back. Well, I just want to take the opportunity to point out that I was actually the good one today, teased Paulina. Mr. Coffee, still holding on to Miss T, said, did you forget that you also took my car without my permission? Well, yeah, but at least I didn't commit a hit and run like Miss Smooth Criminal over there, joked Paulina. Alina, are you okay? Would you tell us? Are you okay? Miss T. Miss T chuckled and threw her towel at Paulina. Then she stepped on a chocolate chip and slipped. Mr. Coffee caught her before she fell. She looked up at him. He looked at her lips and then back into her eyes. The moment seemed to last for an eternity, but was actually only a few seconds. Then Mr. Coffee straightened, steadied Miss T on her feet, and let her go. Ooh, almost. Almost, said Paulina to herself with a smile. And thus ends the case of the almost kiss. The end. I do hope that you enjoyed this story. Join us again next time for another tale from our Bedtime Tea collection. Until next time, sleep well, jolly tea drinkers, and may your cups overflow with joy and peace.